Hello and welcome to Tarot Sherpa. I'm Christine and today I will be your guide through the Navigators of the Mystic Sea Tarot. So the Navigators of the Mystic Sea Tarot was originally published by US Game Systems Incorporated back in 1997. This is not one of those decks. Those decks are actually collectible and you can find those on Etsy and eBay. But check and make sure who your publisher is. Because this one actually was published by Living Magick Publishers in 2007. So Julia Turk owns the copyright to this, and when US Games was no longer publishing it, she found another publisher and started publishing independent. But the pamphlet that's inside here is still cited as being from US Games. There is a book that goes with this, Navigators of the Mystic Sea. This is sold separately. So this did not come as a kit. It may someplace at some point in time, but when I bought it, it did not. So I first found this deck when a tarot book I had been looking at online featured one of her cards as its cover. And I was just so enthralled by the artwork that she had presented in this one card. I'm like, I have to find this deck. And it actually took me quite some time searching to figure out where this deck is, because of course I didn't buy the book and ask where the cover illustration was because I just haven't bought the book yet. No excuse, I just haven't. Anyway, I did find the deck, and so Julia Turk was a yacht captain. She was working out of a shipyard in California, and in 1997 she had experienced, or just prior to 1997, she had experienced a terrible car accident and was very injured and was not able to go back to work. And so she decided to devote her life to tarot, and she took art classes. I mean, this became like a calling for her in this time of crisis. And what she set out to do was to kind of take the original work by Aleister Crowley, one of the original members of the Order of the Golden Dawn, or one of the early members. I can't say he was an original, but he was an early member of the Order of the Golden Dawn. And so he has his own take on how tarot should be laid out. Arthur Waite had his own, and they diverged a little bit. So you kind of have a couple of schools of thought coming out of the Order of the Golden Dawn. So she kind of goes more towards the side of Crowley, but Crowley does have a rather formidable reputation for his I wouldn't say he was necessarily going into black magic, but he was definitely in the occult. That is not anywhere debated. He was definitely an occultist. But he was always a person who was trying to find that higher level of spiritual knowledge. How he went about doing it, a lot of people disagreed with. That is a separate video, and you can watch my 20-minute long diatribe on the life of Aleister Crowley. But she kind of wanted to take this idea and take it a little further, kind of bring a little bit of clarity to it, because Crowley was not a person who was terribly clear in his thinking or in his mind or even in his life. There was a lot of churn, we'll say. And I'm not going to sit here and channel Aleister Crowley. I don't want to go there. So Julia decided to take that as an inspiration and move forward. And her work is absolutely fascinating. This is really very interesting interpretations of kind of what Crowley began. And I've done other Crowley-inspired decks. If you watch my video on the Handel Tarot, he was also inspired by Crowley's work and decided, wanted to take that into a different point of clarity, completely different artwork. But both decks are just extremely fascinating. So let's switch cameras and take a look. Okay, so like I said, these didn't come together as a set. This is the Navigators of the Mystic Sea book that was written by Julia Turk. It is published by Living Magick Publishers. So I'm thinking that this was probably an add-on after she had already completed the contract with US Game Systems. But it is illustrated, it is color, but it certainly is value added because she goes into so much depth with how she designed the cards and the meanings behind the symbols she chose. She's got a bibliography. I love any book that's got a bibliography, because then you can just, there's so much more you can dive into, and it's fabulous. So 250 pages of really good information on both the history of tarot, the meaning of the cards. It's delicious. It's a really good book. Highly recommend. So the cards themselves, it's a 78 card tarot deck based more, like I said, on the Golden Dawn Crowley version. It does come with a wee little book here. You get a little title card and a little bit of poetry. She does include some poetry of hers in this, so it adds just this really lovely depth to it. So here's the booklet, as it says, published by US Game Systems Inc. So I'm guessing she also owned the copyright to this as well. But this was originally published, like I said, in 1997. And it does have a nice little description for each one of the cards. So you could totally get by with just this. And you know, it's almost 40 pages here, so it's meaty. It's more like a snack. This is the full course meal here. So got that. Then the Major Arcana aren't numbered, but she does have them in a particular order in the book, so that's the order that I use. And some of it's very sensible. Fool, Magian, Archpriestess. So there are 22 Major Arcana, and her illustrations are really, really vibrant. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to be interpreted. It's surreal. This is the card. This is the card that was on the front of the book that I'm like, I have to have this deck. The Sun card. That's what did it for me. So like Crowley, she uses Aeon as her judgment card. It's not judgment, it's Aeon. And then Universe is the World card. But 4 suits, yes. You have Wands, Ace through 10, and your Page, your Knight, your Queen, and your King. We'll look at these a little bit more closely in just a moment. So Cups, Ace through 10, Page, Knight, Queen, King. Swords. So you can really see how she was influenced by the work of Lady Frida Harris, who had done the original Crowley cards. In that I wouldn't say it uses perspective geometry like Lady Harris did, but it certainly does have that quality of depth and movement that Lady Harris was able to arrest in her illustrations. So very, very cool. So let's look at them a little bit more closely. So before we dig into the cards here, I just wanted to point out that she uses the Kabbalistic Tree of Life here as the background for the back of the cards. She does go into, in her book here, the big one, the details on the Kabbalah, and she's a little bit deeper into that in this book. So if the Kabbalah and its attributions in the tarot are interesting to you, then the bigger book is definitely a value added there. So we'll begin with the Fool, Magian, Archpriestess, Empress, Emperor, Hierophant, Lovers, Chariot, Strength, and in hers she does use Strength as card number 8. Hermit, Fortune, Destiny rather than Justice, Suspension, Death, Art, like Crowley, takes the place of Temperance as in many decks, Devil, Tower, Star, Moon, there's a lot going on in this card. This is really well worth a longer look here. Sun, Aeon, and the Universe. Next, we'll move into the suit of Wands. The Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Page, Knight, Queen, and the King. We'll move on to the suit of Cups, beginning with the Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Page, Knight, Queen, and the King. Next, we'll move on to swords, beginning with the Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Page, Knight, Queen, and the King. And our last suit is Pentacles, beginning with the Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Page, Knight, Queen, and the King. Since Julia Turk cites Crowley as a major influence, I just wanted to kind of look a little bit at how that sort of played out. I have obviously the Thoth Tarot by Aleister Crowley on the right here, and then the Navigator Tarot here, Navigators of the Mystic Sea, here on the left. So you can kind of see some of the elements of Frieda Harris's artwork influencing Julia Turk's artwork. Dominion, Two of Wands, as it's listed Dominion here, she's also called it Dominion here. Now, obviously this one is not a huge influence, although you can kind of see that in the flames there and the flames that Lady Harris used here. And here, cohesion or virtue. So it's interesting, sometimes the keywords that she uses are the same, and sometimes she'll take an element, perhaps what Crowley interpreted as virtue, she interprets as cohesion. And one more, we'll look at the Four of Wands here, delight and completion. So just a few examples here of the influence of the Thoth Tarot on the Navigators of the Mystic Sea. Well, I hope you enjoyed our journey through the Navigators of the Mystic Sea Tarot. Roses and thorns for this deck. I enjoy this deck, but I will give you a kind of a word of caution in that it is a deck that's for somebody who's a little bit more serious about tarot, who's a little bit more of an experienced reader, or who really wants to dig deeply into symbology and surrealism, the work of the Golden Dawn as reflected through Aleister Crowley's work, and how Julia Turk has therefore interpreted that work. There's a lot of people who object to the work of Aleister Crowley, and so this might make that level of depth a little bit more accessible to somebody who's put off by the occultist. But so in that way, it does make Crowley a little bit more accessible, but it is very interesting all on its own, and I really enjoy the symbology, and it certainly is, it's not in your face symbolic, like, you know, this is a big heart and it will mean love. No, it's subtle. There's a subtlety to it, and there's an intricacy to the deck that is very, very appealing if you are into intricacies. So there's the caveat. I see it as a rose. I find it absolutely fascinating. It sounds kind of weird, but it seems like she took this amazing spiritual turn at a very difficult period in her life, and I admire that she created this with that tragedy, transforming it into something that was really incredible work of art. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like. If you like this content, please subscribe. I will follow this up with a reading using the Navigators of the Mystic Sea deck and a spread that she's got in her little book here. So it's a bit of a long spread. It might be a bit longer reading, but I hope you'll join me there. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.